have a couple changes to the agenda. So going down the list, item 9.5, we're going to call it, down after the disposal of items. There's a donation to the junior high girls basketball team. We need to take action on. And then 17.5, 17.5, we need to nominate a KESB delegate for the annual convention to be the voting representative of the district. All right, so with that, do I have an approval of the agenda? Thank you, TJ.
I'll second.
Thank you, Deb. Motion by TJ, seconded by Deb to adopt the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. Thank you. Next, delegations, we don't have any, so we will just move right on there. Consent agenda. Again, just as a reminder, we need to approve the minutes of October 12th, the special board meeting minutes of October 21st, and the special board meeting minutes of October 28th.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Deb.
I'll second.
Thank you, Bree. Is there any discussion? I just have a couple of questions on the check register, and it's the special ed money. So we have the monthly, the $35,430 that we pay to them, and then on page 5 we have 2 other payments going out. Just want to clarify what those are for page 5 of the check register. It's ESS, the $90,000 and the $7,600.
That is the flow through that just comes from the state. It flows right through our account, happens about 4 times a year. And where's the other one?
Right above that one, Scott. It says
Oh, that's the,
ESSER.
that is spark money flowing through to them. ESS, that's the ESSER money.
Okay. Thank you. I thought that $90,000 was just the flow through, but just double checking. So, okay, thank you. Any other discussion or questions? Okay, all in favor? 7-0. Thank you. All right, so next, we have a presentation to do. We'll turn it over to you, Scott.
Thank you. It's not very often that small districts get a lot of recognition, and I know this isn't any new news if anybody's looked at social media, but when we have a particular teacher organization that recognizes and honors one of our staff members as Teacher of the Year, that's quite a big deal. And I have spent a lot of time in the elementary school. I have partaken in the hunt for Sasquatch. I have watched the Halloween activities. I've been able to read books, and I would to the gym class, and I would just like to say, every time I'm over there, it is an exciting, engaging time in the gymnasium with students. And Shari Pittenger was selected by, it's a big old long, I'm just going to say CAPER because it's this huge acronym, as the Elementary Physical Education Teacher of the Year. And we just wanted to recognize her tonight officially and congratulate her for representing 298.
All right. Congratulations, Shari.
Thank you.
Quite an honor still. So, okay, so next, moving on, track committee. We have John.
Yep, as an introduction, John and I have been talking, I've been researching the track a lot. We attempted a patch job. John is well connected in the sports industries, and so he was able to get somebody to come and look at it, and the three of us walked around the track. And just to give you a heads up, the patch job that we did, it wasn't bad. I mean, it wasn't bad. But when we walked around and looked at the scope of what that would entail, there were as many risks to patching it that if we weren't perfectly level and an athlete was running and dipped a 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch, they were very concerned with the cost and the magnitude of patching. So, John and I have been discussing things, how do we do this, and he would like to present to you tonight an opportunity to possibly head up a committee that would start really digging into it. So,
Well, first of all, I'll say that I don't want to sugarcoat things. It's a really bad situation out there. And I don't know if I've been out to it many times over the years, but to take a close look at it like that, it just really, it's a massive renovation project. And the people that we spoke with, Mettner Track, which is a relatively new Kansas-based turf contractor that also is now doing turnkey projects that include tracks. And most recently, they did Abilene's whole football stadium. They did a track, bleachers. They put one of the nicest video boards in the state of Kansas in there, that kind of thing. And he said, his comment was, there are people out there that would offer to patch this for you, but in good conscience, we can't do that. So, even before going and looking at it, this is something that I knew was a need and something that I wanted to try to help with. And so I would like to try to get a group of people together so that we can look at what the process is going to be. It's going to require a lot of money. I would hate to guess, but I think probably we're talking about $200,000+. And so I guess I just need the board's blessing to go out, seek out some people that would be interested in getting together and seeing about how we could raise the funds, and then working hand in hand with Mr. Crenshaw or whatever the process is with the board and the district. And we need a bid essentially so that we have an idea of what we're even talking about. And so I think that we've kind of started the ball rolling on that a little bit, and then we'll just come back on a regular basis and I have some people in mind for the committee, people that have been supportive of track over the years. And I think the track is more than just for the track program. Certainly that's a tremendously important part of it, and frankly, if you want to look at the most successful athletic program that Lincoln has had consistently over the longest period, it's probably our track program. But also it's used for youth track meets, and probably most importantly, it's a huge piece of the community's healthcare and fitness infrastructure, because there's adults that are using it on a regular basis to stay healthy and those kind of things. I think it's really important to get out in front of the Facebook crowd right away. So I'm going to say that my goal would be that there not be any tax dollars involved with it, that it would be an entirely privately funded project. Now, that's going to be a tremendous effort. I mean, if you look at it, I think probably the first step is to find a couple of anchor donors that might be interested in some naming rights or things like that. And you just go through the process and you explore those people that that might be interested, and you talk to them, put it out there, and kind of see what happens. If you don't have one of those types of donors or several of those types of donors, it may not get done. And right now, I don't know what that means for the future of the track out there, because I think there's some risks involved with it the way that it is right now. And not only is it an important part of our of our overall community infrastructure. It's also an economic development tool, especially in a rural county like ours, in the middle of a rural part of the world. Having those assets will be ever more important as we go forward. And so, you know, I would assume that you guys, all you'll have to say is, oh yes, please go out and raise $300,000, and I'll try to do that. But, you know, do you have any questions about it, or thoughts on it, or shall I just go get the money?
Go get the money.
Okay, all right, well, see you later.
John, you said you had some people in mind to serve on the committee. If a community member would be interested, can they approach you?
Sure, absolutely.
I mean, you're gonna open to anybody who would.
Absolutely, if they stay 6 feet away from me, they can approach me. And, my email is johnbetts@gmail.com, or, you know, if you go to Kansas Pregame website, or if you go to any of my Kansas Pregame social media, you can find all my contact information out there.
Definitely something does need to be done, and we kind of discussed that and have looked at other options, so I think this, to me, this might be another.
We know we don't have the money.
Right.
Yeah, we know we don't have the money, so we need help. And if you're willing to spearhead something like that, I'm all in favor of that.
I'm willing to try. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. This is not my area, and maybe I should have talked to Mr. Crenshaw or Mr. Chris before I came in here. But one thing I was thinking about was, we're not going to raise the money and get the project done by next spring. That's not going to happen. So if we're aiming for the spring of 2022, and the track ends up being potentially not usable this year, one thing I wondered about was, could you partner with a neighboring district? For example, Wilson holds their junior high track meets in Russell, you know, every year or whatever. Would Beloit be interested in holding Lincoln's track meets so that you could keep those teams together and keep that meet together and not completely lose it and they go off everywhere else? So that's just something to potentially explore, and I'm sure Steve has thought about that. He's been doing it for 1,000 years, so. But he doesn't. He only looks like he's been doing it for 5. So. Any questions?
I would say this, even today I emailed that Mammoth Turf we've been emailing back and forth, and we're actually asking for the moon, because Mrs. Flynn has said, if we're gonna do this, let's do it right, and get it to where we can host league meets, or host a regional meet, which requires an 8-lane track, which requires conversion from yards to meters, which requires another set of long jump pits, and possibly another high jump on the opposite end. So we're asking for the moon in dollars, so that John and his group have an idea. Because if we don't get a real accurate number, you can throw anything out there you want. You know, we could put another Band-Aid on it for $100,000 and have this conversation in 18 months. So the conversation's ongoing. The conversation about track meets is ongoing. So we'll keep you posted as we go.
I know we've had quotes in the past for the track, and I think if I'm not incorrectly, the range anywhere from 250 to $500,000.
Yeah, I said 200, fully knowing that number was totally not
Because I don't
right.
think any of the companies can tell us, we could give an exact amount due to the fact that they don't know the substrate.
Sure.
Condition is in.
Well, and if it's got to be converted, if you do decide you're going to add a lane and you're going to convert it, it's going to be.
But if we're gonna do it, we should do it right.
Should do it right, yes.
And we're very creative. I asked the guy when we were walking around the track, how much money can we save if we tear this out ourselves? We have community members that have that kind of equipment, and if we can save $50,000 by tearing that thing out and they come into a oval dirt track, it saves us money. Nobody around here is afraid to work, at least nobody I found yet. So creativity is what's going to get this thing done.
And you hate to see all the time and money that's already been spent out there wasted too. we're getting ever closer to having quite a jewel in terms of an athletic complex out there, and this would certainly add that other piece to it. But again, I mean, you know, if anybody's watching this on Facebook Live or listening, you know, if you want to be that first $50,000 to $100,000 donor, feel free to just step up right now. So, my phone's not ringing yet.
It's your email, the law.
Yeah.
So, consensus of the board is
Yes.
to let
Yes.
Mr. Betts go ahead and proceed.
Absolutely.
CJ, David, Bree?
And I won't.
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, I just want to make sure it's consensus of the board is to go ahead.
She's against it.
Yeah. So, okay, all right, very good.
Just for clarification,
Thank you
is Mr.
very
Crenshaw
much,
going to
Shari.
be on that too then?
Pardon me?
Is Mr. Crenshaw going to be on that board too, or?
I assumed that it would be hand in hand. I guess I never considered whether he should be on the committee or not.
I'd rather link arms than hold your hand, but.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Would you like to be the first appointee to the committee? I mean, I guess technically the second,
But
but
I didn't know if you wanted to have a board member just kind of
Well,
be
yeah.
vocal for the board too, and as far as knowing the school board's rules and regulations to kind of help out. I'm just.
sure, absolutely.
We have a facilities committee, and I'm sorry, I don't know
Yeah.
who's on, are you on that, TJ? John?
Used to be on it.
John and
But
TJ.
the last year I was not. I think Mark Brennan was on it.
Yeah, John is.
So was
So
that,
John was-
is that, okay? I mean, we can have up to 3 board members without being against the open meetings, so, but I mean, John, are you interested in that, or TJ, or David, or, well, the ladies too? I can tear stuff up, I just can't put it together,
I'm more into construction.
so, yeah. So,
I think having a board representative is a good idea, and I'm guessing that, I haven't even talked to Mr. Chris yet. I just assume that he would also be in favor of a new track.
I would think
So,
so.
I certainly plan to talk to him and to find out what,
Sure.
what he would like, and if he wants to be a part of this, and
it's you. So, okay,
Okay, sounds
all
good.
right, very good, thank you, John.
yep,
Like you said, it's a great big undertaking, but I think
Thank you
it's
for
something
taking
that
it on.
our community definitely needs.
well, don't thank me until I come back and say I've got
Well,
$300,000.
No, so, no, it's definitely a hub for the community, and it's used constantly, so we definitely don't want an injury, something that can be prevented, so. All right, so thank you very much. So, all right, so going on, next we have the district audits. I'm gonna butcher your last name, how about Craig? There we go, from Summers, Spencer and Company.
Thank you.
He's gonna review our audit for us, so.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and go through the audit. If you take out your bound copy, inside, when you first open it, there's a letter that's loose there. You can set that to the side for a second. As you get past the table of contents, there's a letter in there. And this is the letter where we actually give our opinion, but I will just point out in the auditor responsibility, on the front of that letter, our responsibility is to give an opinion on this financial statement. That is our intended purpose here, so that is what we do. So if you flip it over to the next page, about halfway down the page, you'll notice a paragraph titled Unmodified Opinion on Regulatory Basis of Accounting. This just simply means this financial statement is not prepared in GAAP. You opt out each year for GAAP to opt into the cash basis of accounting. And so that that paragraph there is where we say that we feel that these financial statements are presented fairly. So that is a good opinion that you want in that paragraph. If you flip it over to the, we call this statement 1, it's the statement that lists all the accounts and their balances, and this is a summary statement here. A couple of things just to note on this statement, this is page 4 and 5. There is a new fund on the very bottom of page 4. It's the, I guess you better call it ESSER, right? ESSER fund. That fund is negative, and that is due to the timing of the reimbursement that comes in, so expenditures have to be made, and then reimbursement happens after the end of the year. So that's the reason why that is a negative. On page 5, just a quick note, the unencumbered cash balance of $765,486 that you see, that is a decrease of about $941,000. Of course, you had two big projects, the FEMA project and the HVAC project that was being done this year, which is the reason for that. So this is just your summary of all the funds, the cash balances of the district at the end of the year, at the end of June. A couple of note disclosures that I'd like to cover. Some of these are pretty standard, so we'll just flip to page 8. There is an italicized heading called custodial credit risk deposits. One of the things that we always have to do each year is to check to make sure the cash held in the bank is secure, properly secured through FDIC coverage and other means. And so the last sentence of that paragraph states that all deposits were legally secured. So you flip it over to page 10. There is a note disclosure that's underlined. It says net pension liability. This has to do with the CAPER's shortfall or deficiency, or however you want to describe that. It has to be disclosed in your notes. You'll see a big number there, $3,177,459. That is the deficit of the CAPER's liability. That's your portion of that. I will note that it did decrease by about $157,000 from the previous year, so things are going in the right direction as far as that CAPER's deficiency. Flip over and we go to page 12. This is just a note disclosure. Note 12 is just a note disclosure about that negative balance fund. So we just have to disclose why that was negative, and so there was the reasoning inside that paragraph there, so I just wanted to point that out. Page 13 is the debt schedule. Nothing new to report here other than your standard payments, and it just lists the amount of debt that's left on that schedule. So just to give a snapshot of what you've got left here, paying off your leases. Once you're done with that, go ahead and flip to 14. 14 is just a summary of the budget and a summary of the expenditures against that budget. If you look at the far right-hand column, all of those numbers should either be 0 or negative. That just means you didn't have any budget violations, so that's what we want to see there. And starting on page 15, this is where we list the individual funds. And I just want to hit a couple of things. Most of this is nothing really to necessarily to talk about. One of the things I do like to point out each year is the transfers that go out of the general fund and LOB fund. Just to kind of give you an idea of how much was available to transfer out at the end of the year. So as you look at operating transfers and the expenses, you can just notice there was more transfers than the previous year that went out. And then same with the page 16's LOB fund. You can just kind of note the transfers that went out of that fund. In the receipts in the supplemental general fund, just to kind of give you an overall picture, the overall tax revenue that came in was $42,000 higher than the previous year, and that includes the supplemental general fund and the capital outlay fund. Both of those funds have tax revenue coming in, so that did increase from the previous year. And now we're going to flip to page 20. This is the capital outlay fund. Usually I like to point out if there's any expenditures in this fund, kind of what they are. The central services, that line where you look over and the expenses are $20,737, that was for a freezer. Under operations and maintenance, that is your general maintenance cost, payroll and repairs and maintenance, so that's pretty standard from year to year. The facility acquisition and construction, that 176 number, 176,341. There was FEMA shelter expenses in there, which was the bulk of it, and also the field house roof. So that makes up most of that amount in that category there. You can turn to page 22. Just going to point out the revenue that came in for the food service, obviously, COVID-related, decreased the local receipts. It means decreased the amount of money that the students paid and the teachers. However, the federal aid, you'll notice, did increase, and that's because all the students were counted in as free meals at the end of the year. So a little bit of COVID-related info there for you. And we'll flip through most of these. You can glance at it if you like, but there wasn't anything really to talk about until, let's see. 33 is where that new fund is, that ESER funding. But we've already discussed that. If you turn to 35 is the gifts and grants fund, and that big expenditure number there is obviously the FEMA grant and the HVAC project that we had spoken before, and that is the entirety of that 1.5 million that you see there, that number. And flipping to page 36 is all the student activity funds. Mainly what we're checking here is to make sure all the balances in the right-hand column are all positive, that there's no negative balance in the student funds, and which is what you see. So there's no cash-based violation there. And then the last thing is the district activity funds on page 37. Gives a summary of things like gate receipts and the school projects. These are administered by the schools, but actually belong to the district, these funds that you see here. If you turn the page, there was a special audit this year because of the FEMA grant. So I just wanted to point out a couple of things. This is a federal audit. There's more reporting that has to be done with this than normal. So there's a couple letters here, and I'll just flip to the second letter. So if you go past the first letter, we flip to the second letter. I won't read the title because it's like 3 lines long. But I will note out that the auditor responsibility under this type of audit is more of a compliance audit. It's mainly making sure that you have done your reimbursement request correctly, you've done your reporting to the state correctly, and so that's what this kind of audit is for, is just to make sure you're in compliance. So if you flip one more page, there is actually an opinion on how the district did on this federal audit. It's the opinion on each major federal program. And the opinion is a good opinion. It's in our opinion the district complied with all material aspects regarding compliance for the FEMA grant. So everything looked good there as far as that's concerned. If you flip again until you get to the landscape schedule, this is just a listing of all the federal funds that came in for the school. And if you look on the bottom of page 44, the total of the federal funds was $807,000, and that's what triggered this, what you call single audit, this federal audit. Anything above $750, you have to have a special federal audit mandated by the federal government for receiving federal funds. So, if you turn to page 46, this is just kind of basically a summary of the audited results. And really the only deficiency that we noted here is the deficiency that we have to note each year because we assist with the preparation of the financial statements, and then of course we also assisted with the schedule of the federal funds here. Because we do that, we have to state that as a deficiency. It's a standard thing that you'll see each year on the letter, so I won't go into any of that as far as that's concerned. The action plan for that deficiency is the same that we do every year, that the district review the financials before they're approved, before they're finalized, before I get to you, basically. So that corrective action plan is the same. Okay, real quick, I know I've taken up quite a bit of time here, so I want to get to that letter. That letter is just kind of a summary of the audit overall. There isn't really anything too much I want to say about this letter. This is, if there was any major problems or there were any major disagreements, we would state that in this letter. So this is a very plain letter. We did not encounter any difficulties or have any issue with the audit. There were no corrections to be made, so there's nothing different than what you've seen in your reports, your monthly reports. The page 2, we do give just a couple of recommendations that we've made to the district, and these are just control procedures concerning gate receipts. We do feel that we're recommending a count sheet that follows the money, basically. If cash is being exchanged, that people sign off on a form stating that the cash has changed hands until it gets to the bank. So that's just a protection for anyone involved with handling the cash. And then the last page is the second recommendation. This is kind of another standard recommendation that we make, that any kind of bank reconciliations, which are pretty important in financial reporting, be reviewed and signed off. So that is our other recommendation that we have made. Other than that, that's all we found. So it was a very clean audit and very well done. So I just want to commend them. This is a FEMA project that spanned over 3 superintendents, I guess. So not hard to keep everything straight, but everything looked good as far as that's concerned. So.
Any questions while he's here? I recommend our office staff too, because that's a big undertaking on their part too. So, I want to thank you for coming, Craig.
Okay, thank
and
you.
Leonard for all
Appreciate
that.
it.
So, appreciate it. So, have a safe trip back. Okay, so with that, we have a motion, or not a motion, but we need to approve or move on, approve or not approve, the audit as just presented.
I'll move that we approve the audit as presented.
Gina?
I second.
Thank you, David. Motion by Gina, seconded by David, the USD 298 Board of Education approved the 2019-2020 audit performed for USD 298 Lincoln by Summers, Spencer, and Company P.A. Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. Thank you. And then moving on with that same topic, we've had them do our audit before. Would you like to have them do the audit for next year as well, for the 2021 school year?
I move we allow them to do the audit next year.
Thank you, David.
I'll second
Thank you, Bree. I got Bree first. Motion by David, seconded by Bree, that USD 298 Board of Education approves Summers, Spencer, and Company P.A. to perform the 2021 USD 298 Lincoln District audit. Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. Great job. Okay, so next we have disposal of items in the wonderful modular building at the great school. Mr. Crenshaw,
Yes.
do you have a long list of stuff for us?
So the modular building that you approved to be removed has some stuff in it. Leftover garage sale stuff. What I need is permission to go through it with Dennis and determine what is worth keeping and what needs to accompany the building to the landfill. The good news is, back in June 27 of 2016, Superintendent Kathy Robertson had already gotten approval to dispose of that at no charge at a county commission meeting, so we don't need to revisit that.
Oh, great.
It's already a free disposal, but there are things in it that need to be gone through. We had talked about setting things out and just saying, hey, this didn't sell at the garage sale, what's here Monday morning is going back into the unit, and just, there's just a lot of conversation with remote learning, everything else, desks, chairs. There might be some people that could use some of the things in there that didn't exactly purchase it at the time that there was that garage sale. So I just need to know if that's okay, and then what is in that building goes with that building when we designate a date.
Is that something that Mrs. Schmidt should be in on
Oh, yeah,
when you go
probably
through
so.
that?
Yep.
I'll move that we give you the authority to dispose of whatever items are worthwhile and come from the rest of the landfill.
I'll second.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Deb. Motion by John, seconded by Deb, that USD 298 Board of Education dispose of miscellaneous school items contained in the modular building. located on the west parking lot of Lincoln Elementary School. Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. Okay, thank you. Next, we have a COVID update.
You said 9.
Oh, sorry, 9, yep, sorry. Look at my legend. 9.5. We have a donation for the junior high girls basketball team.
In the amount of $800
Wow.
to be specifically used for warm-ups and their annual trip to K-State for the K-State women's basketball game. Should they be able to go?
Do we have a motion to accept that donation?
I move that we accept that donation.
Thank you, Gina.
I'll second.
Thank you, Deb. Okay, motion by Deb, or excuse me, motion by Gina, seconded by Deb, to accept the donation for the junior high girls basketball team in the amount of $800. Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. Thank you. Now COVID update.
Okay, well, there's, as you see, there's a lot of information stuff, so I'll try not to be too wordy. But I think it's important that everybody realize we have several surrounding districts that have gone full remote as of today. So why we live in this bubble, I have no idea, and I have no complaints. Because right now, as far as I know, we have no students, no staff, no quarantine, no positive, we're in school, and we're continuing on normally. Will this wave roll through here? Every prediction is that it will, eventually. However, we're moving day by day, and we'll address it day by day. But I think we can be, I think, what are we, week 12 this week? That is just amazing compared to what's been going on in surrounding districts that have been partial remote or hybrid. We haven't had to significantly alter our educational processes since school started. So every day that we're in class is a day that kids are where they need to be. And I think we can be thankful for that. If things change, obviously everyone will be notified and we'll make decisions accordingly.
Thank you. Any questions on that? All right. Let's keep us in our little bubble here. All right, so next, procurement procedure. Thank you.
Okay, so when I first brought to you the idea of buying 3 HVAC units at a price of about $16,000, we talked, Nancy and I talked, and we're like, okay, are we in a position that we can start this process without putting ourselves at too much financial risk, without depleting reserves too significantly? And we both agreed that that would be a good move. Then I found out that USD 298 has its own procurement policy, which limits the purchase of any items over $4,000 without going through a bid process and getting 3 bids and waiting a period of time. The state statute, and it's in your packet, the state statute is $20,000, and that's anything above $20,000, you have to bid out for competitive bids to see where we are. I would like it to be something that's on your radar to discuss. I don't know why $4,000 came about, but part of my concern is this: if we get into December and I have an air conditioner unit or a heater unit at high school that goes out, I can't buy one without a bid process. So we can't react, we can't have any sort of an emergency action without a bid process when we have a $4,000 bid limit, or bid minimum, if you will. Does that make sense? Am I explaining that right? So, I brought it up in my superintendent Zooms. All of the North Central superintendents and districts have a $20,000. They just follow the state statute. I'm not trying to go crazy and get you to approve me being able to buy, new stuff. I think, I hope that you feel like I've kept you informed about everything that we've done. That wouldn't change at all. And to make sure that you're on board is different than going through a formal bid process. So I would just like that addressed. It's an information item only, but if you would give me some direction or a dollar amount, I would go through our procurement policy and maybe make some adjustments just to numbers. But it's up to you. Like I said, I don't want to get in a position where we need a vehicle and we can't buy one, or we need a heater and we can't buy one without waiting 10 days.
Doesn't it lend to having uniform air conditioners or uniform whatever if we can just buy, when we need them, we buy them from the same place, as opposed to if we send out a bid each time and the lowest bid is different, then we end up with.
Well, we have three manufacturers up on the roof now.
So
Yeah.
I guess I'm curious if it would simplify things if we could.
As long as I can work the deal, yes. It's just food for thought.
So bring that back next time, is that,
If you want, if you would consider it and you want me to rewrite something, I would be happy to for your consideration.
I understand where he's coming from.
Yep.
I get that,
And I think that in the past, it's just been, when we have smaller projects, is to give everybody an equal opportunity by the local contractors. And I think that's what probably came into effect this one. I wasn't aware of that it came into procurement, all the way to procurement plan, that actually was a $4,000 limitation. Because it does hamper you as far as the abilities to make those quick changes, like I said, about the AC unit. So personally, I'd definitely be open to bringing that back as a discussion next time and bringing an example on the procurement plan.
And it doesn't have to jump all the way to $20,000. If the board was more comfortable with 10, and I can react to things like a HVAC unit for 6, then we have some safety net and ability to react. But I can bring some information in December.
so, with that process, and as TJ pointed out, we have, I'm just going through, I mean, we're talking about HVAC systems, a couple of different options in town. You would talk to them, the local contractors as well, vote all of them, and not just
Oh, yeah.
one, not just separate one. I mean, I think that they need to have,
Yeah,
it has a lot of
not
eyes
getting-
in the
yeah,
district, so.
If I can clarify, not getting a bid doesn't mean that I'm not gonna shop.
Yeah.
It just means I can shop faster
Faster.
and
Okay.
make a decision faster. It doesn't mean that I've got something going on, because I'm kind of a cheapskate, so I will ask prices and move.
Okay, all right, very good, very good. Good with that. Okay. All right, so we're good with that, coming back next time and have a suggestion. Okay. All right, next, Mettner Track.
Kind of piggybacking on what John said, the current state of that track prohibits us from having successful track meets there without putting student athletes at risk. I've had multiple meetings with Mr. Christ and Mrs. Flynn. We feel that we can no longer host meets. We can no longer practice on that. And so Mr. Christ is planning on trying to figure out how to practice on the football field, practice field. If we can find segments of the track that might be okay for certain things, then we'll use segments of the track, but full-blown track practice and competitions is no longer an option there. So I just wanted to inform you of that. We'll be as John said, we'll be contacting other schools and either trying to find a place to host meets or let these schools know that we're out of the game for a period of time so that they can find meets. And if any of you walked around it, I think you'll know what I'm talking about. The gaps and the curls, and it's really the curls that are most dangerous. I think walking is slow enough, but where that track breaks, and what it looks like, when I peeled that up for those patches, you can still see white stripes on the asphalt that's underneath of there. So I think all they did was come in and cap it. So whatever that old asphalt track was, there's gaps an inch or more. I can stick the handle of a hammer down in some of the cracks in the asphalt itself. So it's no different than a tire or anything else. Those things are made out of rubber tire scraps, pieces. So as the UV rays hit them and disintegrate and wear that stuff down, as that asphalt contracts and expands, it loses its ability to be flexible. It becomes brittle, and then it cracks. And then, as water gets under it, freeze cycles occur, it starts to curl up a lip. And so we have places that are half-inch, three-quarter-inch lip, and our fear is that somebody running top speed catches their toe, and it's just disaster waiting to happen. So, part of the problem is that sub. Every patch that I cut out to put in had a significant crack in that asphalt. And I'm sure now they have some materials that account for contraction expansion that they didn't have back then. Basically, we just put a rubber cap on it, on the existing. So, just wanted to inform you of that, keep you posted.
Thank you. Any more discussion on that? Any questions? Nope. Okay. I think it's a good idea to visit with the surrounding counties to see the other schools, see if we can't host it. If they're planning to come to Lincoln, they'll just go to Tuscan or wherever instead of here. We can do that. And definitely something to check out. So that's just an example. I'm not naming them specifically. I'm just throwing that out there. So, because I knew Wilson uses Russell.
Well, test gets close, so just.
Yeah, until it gets close. Yeah. So, yeah. All right. Neighbors on the neighbors. Pardon me?
Freshly renewed one.
Oh, yes, Tescus is brand new. Yeah. So, yep.
That will be a good opportunity.
So, yep. We'll have Mr. Crenshaw reach out and see what we can come back with.
Just wonder what their cost is.
Pardon me?
They would know how much it would cost too,
Mhm.
since they set it down.
And theirs wasn't very old to begin with.
I didn't think it was either.
And I'll throw in there, one of the most important things that we have to do, if we can pull this thing off, we have got to set aside some intentional money for maintenance on that thing. We can't just let the sun hit it for 15 years and then be surprised when it's not any good anymore. And whatever that maintenance program looks like, we're going to have to commit to making sure that that happens. Or we're going to be having the same conversation in a dozen more years after this project's complete. There's resurfacing that goes on river tracks. We can get estimates for it, and then we can just, every year, this is untouchable track facility monies. It's untouchable, so that we don't find ourselves like this again.
Right. Very good. Moving on. We have a speaker in the house, I guess. Chamber copy speaker on November 18th.
I would invite you all to attend. I've been asked to have a little chat, and I can't wait. It's going to be exciting to share not only the positives of Lincoln, why I think Lincoln's the greatest place to live, but also the positives of our schools, celebrate our COVID, celebrate our opportunities, and explain to them that the challenges that we face are nothing but opportunities for success. And so it's going to be very exciting just to have a little chat with the Chamber, share some things, talk about projects like this track, and just continue to express that my philosophy is We are all players in the same game, and we must be on the same team. And that's how we're gonna succeed. So, if you wanna come over for a meal, I don't know how you sign up, but maybe just drop in.
Contact the chamber.
But you're welcome to come by. Yeah, I'm inviting you anyway. I don't know if you're really welcome, but I'm inviting you.
I'm sure you can buy a ticket, so. Okay, very good. So next, E-rate updates. Mrs. White?
Yes, it's time to file our Form 470, which is our request for proposals. And for next year, we are going to request proposals for a firewall and the wireless at the high school, once again. And we'll put that out for 30 days. We'll do a bid evaluation, and then we'll come back to you, and then we'll determine at the time what we're going to go forth with and file our Form 471 and try to get that in place. So, I think we're at an 80% discount again this year, so we'll pay 20% of whatever we get. So.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Brenda. Any discussion on the E-rate? There'll be more discussion later once you bring some information back. But is there any questions, anything you want her to look at while she's looking? Okay. All right, indoor sports liability.
Okay, you'll see in your packet, there are two forms, one for wrestling, one for basketball. We're having a difficult time getting leadership in activities. So what we're trying to do from state agencies, let me throw that out there. Okay, Keisha. So we can't get some good, solid guidelines of expectations. There is no greater exposure person to person, really, than basketball and wrestling. So after consulting with KESB, I was given parts of this liability release. Our building's under a mask mandate. All the buildings are, and we cannot effectively control extra activities that are voluntary after school. Does that make sense? So everyone needs to be very clear that participation in these activities may result in an increased risk of exposure to COVID-19, and they need to just be aware of that going in. There are league guidelines about wearing masks on the sidelines when you're not participating, but when you're out on the court or when you're on the mat, you know what, it's hard enough to speak and breathe and continue this, but heavy exertion with a mask on, it's unfeasible. So, we are going to require this of every student who wants to participate in activities, and the blue paragraph is really the most important. The other is a standard, there's always a risk of injury. But this the blue one is most important because that's the part that says there is a risk of exposure, masks are worn when possible at coach's direction. However, given the level of exertion required, for wrestling in this case, for basketball in the other form, mandating masks at all times is impossible. Wrestling in this case, basketball on the other one is an optional activity. The undersigned parents and guardians recognize and agree that there will be an increased risk of COVID-19 exposure during practice and at competitions. So this was a recommendation of the legal team at KESB. I typed it up specific for us and covered basketball and that. So again, it's kind of informational. It's just what we're doing at the building level, and these will be handed out starting tomorrow and will be required for participation.
Thank you. Any discussion? Any questions? Okay. All right, parents and teachers reports.
Well, first, if you know, and you may, we do have a new parent as teacher coordinator, Leah Pittman. And this report, if you read through it, and I won't read it to you, will just show you the impact of that program and the families and children that are served by it. As we talk about student success, this is a critical part of it in our community, and I'm just glad that we can participate in it. I just wanted that in there for your reference so you could see the impact that the Parents as Teacher programs have in here.
All right, it does make an impact. My 3 kids had the opportunity to participate in that, and it's a well needed and deserved program, so utilized. Any questions? Okay, moving on, calendar committee updates.
So the negotiated agreement says that there will be a calendar ready to present November 1st, which maybe that wording needs to be changed eventually to the November board meeting, but we did meet our deadline. There's 3 drafts in there, and I'll just summarize them real quickly for you. Draft number 2 really mirrors this year. Starting the same time, ending the same time, same holidays. However, in draft 2, we didn't front load the PD days when they're scattered out, because next year we'll be back in the KESB cycle and we'll need time to be working on that. Draft 3 starts later and ends the same time. And the way that that worked was we lose 2 days of Christmas break, we lose 1 day of Easter break. So that is how we start late and end at the same time. Draft 4 starts late and then ends late and keeps all of the holidays as they have always been. Spring break is kind of a kicker because all 3 weeks of March have a different organization's spring break. And if I remember right, the week of the 7th was KU, the week of the 14th was Fort Hays, and the week of the 21st was K-State. And I may have KU and K-State flipped. But I think the travel industry has figured out that if they can extend spring breaks over the entire month, there's a lot more money to be made than spring break. So we picked the middle one because it's always been the one, it's the same as this year. This information was sent out to the staff through the calendar committee, and draft 2 was the preferred calendar. I expressed to them that according to the negotiated agreement, this is input only, and the board has the decision of what the calendar will look like. This isn't a negotiated item. However, we do want them to have input and to hear their voices if there was concerns. The calendar committee, they put in several hours, and it's on their own time, and we were in constant communication back and forth, so I would applaud the people on that group for a job well done.
Any discussion on the calendars that were presented? Any questions? Look at them over the month
Well,
and
we
then
gotta
bring it
do
back
one?
in December.
Okay.
So I think, yeah, we can bring it back in December. I don't think we act on this until February, is that right?
Okay.
January, February, or we can do it earlier, but it's not, okay. So,
I think this year we had 168 student contact days, and
That's what I was
draft 2 is 171, but it keeps the contract days for staff the same,
okay.
which I like. I think the more contact time we have with students, that's what we're supposed to be doing, so
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind having a few extra days of student contact days.
Which draft did the staff prefer?
Number 2.
Yeah, that's a top.
Which mirrors basically our
Oh, thank you.
calendar this year.
All right, take a look at those and bring those back to the December meeting, and maybe we can have a early decision then. All right, KESB delegates. Every year we have all they vote on.
If you want to have a voting voice, then we need to designate a delegate for that and turn that name into KESB this month.
And it is my understanding it's all virtual this year, which means that the delegation is going to be virtual. There's certain things that you're going to get announcements on in regards to what they're voting. If they're voting for staff that heads up on KSB, for example, for different regions, there's certain nominated people will be nominated by nominated committees. So whoever plans to attend this year, we need to choose somebody to be our voice. I know I've been for the last 3 years, and I'm willing to turn it over to somebody else that would be willing.
But you do such a fantastic job. The virtual meeting, is it all day on the 2nd? Do you know?
I haven't really looked into that.
When is it?
By the 3rd, isn't the 3rd is Saturday, I think? Is that right? Yeah. As long as it's not during my work day, I could do it, but, that's my only thing. I can't be on a conference over at work. It's a Friday night, you said?
Starts Friday night, Saturday, Sunday.
And Sunday's usually the delegate
Oh, okay,
assembly.
okay. Yeah. The 6th.
Oh, there'll be 2 virtual delegate assemblies. One December 3rd and one January 21st.
What?
It says there'll be 2 delegate assembly dates, December 3rd and January 21st. But you still have to submit your voting delegate no later than November 24th.
Yeah. Districts are asked to submit.
I could do the December one, and the January one if it's in the evening, but I don't. So, I guess it's up to you guys. If somebody wants to jump on there and do
The
it.
second will take place on Thursday, January 21st at 6 p.m. The first one is Thursday, December 3rd at 11:45 a.m.
Wait.
Say,
That's when they
December
vote.
3rd is the Thursday. if I'm
Yeah,
looking
it
at
says
right.
Thursday, December 3rd at 11:45. And then the second one's January 21st at 6.
Yep, it is.
Next
I was on the
Thursday at
wrong year.
11:45 a.m.
Yeah. Yeah. So if they vote in the morning or during the day, I'm out.
How long does that part usually last?
I don't know.
Delegate assembly, usually not too long, but on our annual meeting too, we usually had a meet on Saturday. We're going to review some of the changes, some of the verbiage, recommendation for the case policies, and Sunday with the voting,
This says,
less than an hour, I'll say an hour, less than an hour.
the December 3rd one is, delegates will choose a KESB president-elect and vote on proposed KESB constitutional amendments.
Yeah.
The January 21st, they will vote on 2021 legislative positions and priorities. So they are 2 different type of
But
things.
it doesn't say what time.
Yeah, it's at 6 p.m.
Oh, 6 on both these?
No.
No, one is
January 6
11:45.
p.m., December 3rd is 11:45.
So it'd be just for the hour though?
Yeah, 30 less than an hour.
Oh, I
Yeah, they're
probably
split
do
into 2.
if I need that.
But you're the president.
I don't know. That doesn't mean somebody else can't be nominated to do it, so, yeah. And if it's just a short time, I could probably,
I was gonna say, if it was a little
Sneak-
earlier in the
sneak
morning,
in.
I could do it, but 11:45 is gonna be tough, because that's right before lunch.
Yeah.
The 6 p.m. isn't a big deal.
and that would probably be better for me since it would be close to lunch, so.
Okay.
But
You could do that?
That's up to you. Yeah, that's fine. I can do that, yes. Unless somebody else wants to jump in there and by all means. David? No? Darn it. Okay.
So then do you have to do both?
I would assume you would send all the people up, wouldn't you?
advertising to do
Okay.
that. So, okay. Right,
We need to make that
a
happen.
motion?
I move that President Patty Winters be our delegate for the annual convention.
I'll second that.
Gina, thank you, TJ. Motion by Gina, seconded by TJ to nominate Patty Winters as the delegate to the KESB convention for December 3rd and January 21st. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? I'm gonna abstain. Okay, so. All right. Thank you. All right, HVAC bid approval.
We received the bids, since it was over $4,000 for this project. And street plumbing and heating was the low bid. They came in, we have two size units up on that roof. Some of them are 3 tons, some of them are 4 ton. Street bid the 4-ton units at $5,590, the 3-ton units at $5,514. This includes the crane, electrical gas line hookups, the saddle modification. It's a turnkey, that's their bid. Second place bid was Calabrese. The 4-ton unit was $8,795, the 3-ton $8,495, and Elite Construction was the high bid at 4-ton $9,509, 3-ton $9,137. So I recommend that we accept Street's bid, and here's what they think we should do. We should buy 2 4-ton units because that's the most bang for our buck. There's only a $70-some difference. 1 3-ton unit. They've also proposed that they're willing to keep the units that they removed in their warehouse, so that if we do have a need for parts or anything else, they'll hang on to those. Since they are 24 years old, parts could be hard to come by. Also, if we're removing functioning units and one of them completely burns out, we can put a 24-year-old unit back up on there to get by, because none of our units are currently broke down. So they're either spare parts or spare units, and they're willing to hold on and store those for us.
So you would have 3 just sitting there
At their shop.
waiting, I mean.
3 new ones.
and-
So they're gonna
No,
install.
they'll go ahead and install the new ones so we can start the cycle, start moving
Okay.
forward on our replacement cycle. They would store the ones that they pull off to
Okay.
keep them on hand,
I'm following.
either as a temporary emergency or to strip parts off.
Okay. I
Um,
thought they were gonna just sit there and wait for one to
One
come
to
out,
break
and
down.
I'm like.
No, we'll go ahead and start
Yeah,
the process.
yeah, I guess I'll get us on our rotation then.
Yes,
Um,
slowly.
We got the money for that?
I think we need to take it out of gifts and grants so that our contingent, that's where our wind money goes. And the total is gonna be $16,000, $17,000. That way our contingency reserve can remain static where it is right now. I believe we can do it. I know we can do it. And it's something we need to get started on.
That answered my concern from last meeting when I was asking about how did they choose which one to replace, due to the fact that we can't afford to have 3 more breaking down, so if they are willing to hold on to parts and hopefully they can sit okay. Because that is one concern, if more break down, what are we doing in that situation? But I do understand the rotation, and just out of curiosity, because I know we've been replacing now for a few years, but 4 or 5 every year, has it been, how many, Greta?
I don't think we've replaced that many a year.
I think there's only 4 4 new ones up there now.
4 new ones total, okay, so we have 22 total ones.
There's
So if
2
you do-
trains and 2 of a,
Okay.
I think it starts with a B, I can't think of the name.
So if we do 3 a year, we're talking
8 years.
8 years.
We have 24 that need replaced right now. We really need to get to a point we can do 6, or even 6 is gonna be a 4-year turnaround. You know, and by then, we're gonna have 30-year-old, at the end of that cycle, we're gonna have 30-year-old units up there.
Because they're already 5 or 6 years past the lifespan.
There are replacements going on at other schools who had new units in 2008.
Or you just want to get out of
Why are we in
there.
a hurry to get rid of our good old ones? I agree.
I would make a motion that we accept Street's proposal to do 3 units, 2 4s and a 3.
I'll second.
Thank you, John, thank you, Deb. Okay. Let me get caught up here. All right, so a motion by John, seconded by Deb, the USD 298 Board of Education accept the bid of, what was the total?
16,694.
Thank you. $16,694, that's okay, I just hadn't added them yet, from Street Plumbing, for 3 HVAC units to be placed on Lincoln Junior Senior High School. Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0.
If I could give you another piece of information that's kind of exciting from a science nerd perspective. The high school is controlled by the EPM control system, so we can monitor everything. So Dennis and I, he's been gathering data for me, and we've had this conversation. All those units were coming on at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they were running until school started, and then they were shutting off at 4. So I asked him to monitor all the temperatures and turn all those units on 1 hour later at 7 o'clock and see if the building can be brought to temp in that amount of time. And it can. So if we have 30 total units up there, we've saved 30 hours of 1 unit running continuously. Now we're going on the back end and we're shutting them down at 3:30 to see if the temperature will maintain till 4. And then we're gonna try to shut them down at 3 and see if the temperature will maintain comfort level until the kids and the staff are all gone. So one of the games that I'm having fun playing is, how soon do we have to turn the power on? It has a fail-safe freeze to where if it gets down to 50, it will kick on and go up to about 60. The next phase that he's going to do is play with internal rooms versus external rooms, because the external rooms with an exterior wall should be more susceptible to temperature change. So let's play with the internal rooms, turn them on and off at different times, and see what kind of efficiencies we can save, not only in equipment running needlessly, but also in energy usage. And come summertime, it'll be real different. We don't need to air condition entire buildings all summer long. So, anyway, that's kind of a fun thing. I'm gonna ask him when he gets enough data, and now we're looking at those BARD units and electric usage a year prior to compare to now. He's gonna present his spreadsheet, and we'll have a chat about the kind of fun stuff he's collecting on EPM.
Very good. Okay, moving on, administrator reports. Mrs. Schmidt?
Okay, next.
Oh, there she is.
The report that I had went ahead and prepared for the November meeting listed that we had 2 new students start at Lincoln Elementary in the month of October. Today, we actually had 2 more students start, another family came in, and that's a 4th grader and a 1st grader respectively. So we're continuing to grow, which is a positive thing. I also wanted to take this time to publicly thank and acknowledge Mr. and Mrs. Dargy. They own the Post Rock Motel. Last month, if you remember, they generously donated $200 to Lincoln Elementary School to use at our choosing. This morning, he surprised me with brand new coats for several Lincoln Elementary students to be used at our discretion. So they continue to generously support us, and we do thank them for their generosity. The last thing I have is, next week starts Kansas Reads to Preschoolers Week. And in the past, we've had people come in and read to preschoolers. Mr. Crenshaw will be doing it at some point, and I will as well. But I was also thinking if anyone on the board would like to come read to a class, please let me know. They love having guest speakers. They love seeing different people in the community. So if that's something you're interested in, we can help you find the books, and the elementary school could get books for you, and our students would enjoy it. So just let me know, and we will go from there. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, and thank you to Mr. and Mrs. Dargy again, so we greatly appreciate that. So moving on, Mrs. Walter, her report is in, was attached to your reports that were mailed out. So, with that, we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
So while this thing's booting up, just kind of some excitement. I think I put it in your Friday notes, but I've never done a lot of grant writing stuff before, but I did write a little submission for Post Rock for the weight room. I was over there, and it's very clanky, and the concrete's chipped from the weights and different things, and the weights kind of get dented and whatever. So I submitted a $9,500 request for a 1/2-inch rubber tile floor in there, and it was approved. So the cost of the thing is like $11,000 for about $1,500. We're gonna have a 1/2-inch interlocked tile floor in that weight room, and since the community uses it, it's just gonna be a great addition to ramp that up into more of a realistic weight room than just the concrete floor clanking around all the time. So I thought that was exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna keep this stuff in front of you. I was able to go to Manhattan Wednesday. I'm constantly traveling to get information, analysis, understanding, comprehension of our finances so that we can strategically plan how we're going to recover from our current situation. So Steve Parsons is a retired superintendent from Chanute. That was his last school district. And he is my Obi-Wan Kenobi of budgets. So to give you an idea of our assessment, we spent most of the afternoon together. We, without significant change, we have about 2 to 3 years before we will be completely unable to finance our school district. This is a 5-year trend in our operating funds. This is that contingency reserve that I don't want to touch. It is the only insurance policy that we have in cash right now of any significance whatsoever. This is our capital outlay. This is where we pay for facilities and emergencies and heating and cooling units. And we pay for maintenance and custodial salaries out of capital outlay. So what that reflects in July 1 of 2020 is not what's currently in there. It continues to decrease because we simply have not had funds at the end of the year to transfer to our reserve accounts. This is not good. And then all of our funds all together, you just put them all together, and we just have this continuing decline of money. So my goal this year is to stop the decline and at least flatline it. There isn't an invoice, I think Greta can attest to this, there is not a dime that goes across my desk that if I don't think it's necessary, I'm not asking questions about. Because we simply can't continue these trends. So my goal is to really just try to stop the downward. If we can come back June 30 and these lines have flattened out, that'll be huge. But it won't happen without saying no to some things, you know. And so that's kind of where we are right now. I am selectively having to say no to some things. The good news is, because there's always the good news is this is our opportunity. This is the reason for what this is the reason why we need to do things. And it can't, and I don't put this up here to be negative. I put this up here to always keep it on your radar, that when we leave here, the rest of the week in this district office, we're struggling financially. We have to make hard decisions. And so I don't want to spin this as I'm always the Debbie Downer of the board meeting, but I want you to constantly be aware. We have to work together strategically and make decisions that are going to change those lines. And that's the opportunity we have. You know, it's like I told Greta the other day, you can either be a rock star or a falling star, but you have to do something. And so we need to move forward, understanding the reality of our situation. And I will continue to give you this kind of information so that we're always checked in reality. Another thing that's come up is the lift at the elementary school, because there's never not an issue. So we had to have it looked at and repaired. And that lift is 27 years old. The estimated cost of replacement, I called the guy and talked to him quite at length, $25,000. So my question is this, is Mrs. Schmidt and I brainstorm and research, is that where we want our cafeteria? Do we want to continue to have flights of stairs and the need for a $25,000 lift? Or is it time to start thinking outside the box and come up with some other solutions? The guy that repaired it has one more motherboard for that lift, and then that will be done. It's the only spare he has. The trouble is, it's not the only lift like that. I told him we want to buy it now. So those are some of those opportunities as we look at our reality, and then we make plans for our future. And Mr. Schmidt and I continue to talk about ideas, and as ideas continue to come forward, we'll keep you informed on where we probably should go. But I don't think there's any question in my mind whatsoever that if we could figure out a different kitchen cafeteria, it would be a huge advantage to where we currently are now. We're splitting kids up for lunch, they're still eating lunch on the stage. It's just kind of crazy the way we're having to do things because of social distance, but also just the convenience of it. You put those amount of stairs, our employees at risk, anybody can stumble and fall. And those are not soft carpeted stairs. Our students could stumble and fall, and there's just potential for liability there. And it's inconvenient, it's wore out, it's old, and another place could be more inviting and more efficient.
Just a quick question in regards to the cash balance report that you have up there, because I know we always have the expenses every year. And did you run a correlation on the cash balance versus the funding cuts that we've had since 2015?
No.
How much of that is counted?
I didn't even look at that. All I looked at was just money, not cuts.
Yeah.
Because there's that other trend then, that next year, if Gannon holds true and if we don't get any cuts to education. However, I will tell you, with a word of caution, we lost a lot of our moderates in state government. And the people that won office are more conservative and are already talking cuts to education. So whether they will manage that fiscally responsibly, or whether they will just think, we again have too much money in education and not uphold that Gannon suit, I don't know. I have a legislative luncheon Wednesday? next week, Thursday. And I looked up every person that's there from the legislature, and one of them simply said, if things get tight, K-12 education needs to tighten their belt. So that's their philosophy. So I don't know, our projection next year was we would get an increase of about $83,000 in funding, but you offset that by student reduction, transportation aid reduction, free and reduced lunch, weightings reduction, and we're projected to have a minus $71,000 in funding next year. If they cut education, that's just going to be added immediately onto that 71,000. So if they do not move to the new FTE, we'll be looking at 150,000. If they say we're going to freeze FTE and not go up, we'll be looking at a $150,000 cut next year. Significant. So the pendulum swings. Now, here's something exciting. So everyone's concerned about kitchen staffs getting sick or quarantined and we can't feed kids. And at our admin meeting last week, we talked about that, and the building principals are working with their kitchen staffs to have kind of a Y2K meal plan, or kind of a prepper meal plan, to where we can go 2 weeks with non-perishable or frozen items and continue to have meals for kids should our kitchen staff be quarantined or out. So that's kind of neat. There's enough products out there that will make up a reimbursable meal. It may not be a lively variety, but it will be nutritional, at least, with some energy. But it is a real concern out there right now. There are kitchens that are shutting down. And one superintendent had to close his school simply because his kitchen staff wasn't there. You can't have school if you're not serving meals. It's the big thing about snow days. They want to do remote learning, but you can't have a remote learning day unless you serve a meal, breakfast and lunch, if that's what you normally do. So we'll be embracing snow days. It's like a holiday. November 11 is in 2 days. That is our professional development day. We'll be having a staff lunch that you're more than welcome to join us at noon at the high school. And another super exciting thing, because of COVID, there's a big push to live stream. And our league is recommending that we limit 2 spectators per athlete. So live streaming is becoming a big deal. The National Federation for High Schools and KESB are embracing a company or a concept called Pixelot, and for $2,500 they will mount a live streaming camera in your gym and at your football stadium with all the hardware and software necessary to live stream. So what we are doing is taking this opportunity to use $2,500 out of our Spark money, so it will come out of our emergency COVID fund under the necessity of people wanting to see our activities. And with limited ticket numbers, it's the best way to do it, and it is by far the least expensive way to do it. So we have already put in the PO. We've been scheduling the installation right now, and we're currently running cable so that when they do come, we're ready to get everything hooked up. And I think we're looking at December, aren't we, Brenda?
December 2nd, right?
December 2nd for an install,
I can't remember.
Is there
something like that.
a cost for people to watch?
Yes, it's a pay-per-view. That's how they make their money back. That's why we get it for $2,500.
What kind of cost is it?
Brenda?
For patrons?
Yes.
Is it
$10 a,
$10 a month or
Hello?
$11 a month, and then so
was it
much a year?
$69 a year?
I think so.
Yes.
And then you
here's
can
what's neat.
designate, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, any school across the nation that uses this Pixelot program, that subscription allows you to watch anybody. So if somebody has grandkids in Texas and they're on Pixelot, they can watch Lincoln, they can watch grandkids in Texas, anywhere. So,
And you can designate what portion, I think, was it 50% or not quite 50%? Some of it goes back to the school, and the person who pays the
Right.
subscription can designate the school. I don't know how much of it is.
So this is just a one-time fee for the 25 hours, an annual fee?
It is a one-time fee. Their business model, they make it up on the pay-per-view concept. The $2,500 is basically the installation charge. It's a 5-year commitment, so if this continues, we have the technology. If it doesn't continue, we have the technology. A lot of people are paying Huddle $3,000 and $4,000 for the same thing. So for us, we thought it was a great opportunity to use some COVID spark money. Wouldn't be a cost to us, and yet for 5 years we can stream our athletics in both locations. So,
I know they have streamed before, it's been a number of years ago,
Yeah.
but is
Yeah.
that true, Heather?
Yeah, because we watched,
Yeah, we were watching the game,
we
we
were
were
watching
taking
the game at
tickets,
the high
watching
school, we
the
took
high
tickets, and the
school.
high school girls were playing it
Right,
at the high school.
What's nice about this, prior to when we did that, it took a person to do the live
Yes.
streaming. With this system, it's on a calendar and it just automatically starts and automatically stops, and it doesn't require a person to be up there.
Okay.
So that's the
'Cause I
big,
remember
huge
when we-
plus.
When we did that before, because you and
Yeah.
I took
Yeah.
tickets and watched basketball.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if that was through Huddle or what that
this
was.
tracks
That was through
motion. It also embeds a scoreboard down in the corner, so you can see what's going on. So it's kind of, it should be slick.
And it's called what?
Takes a lot.
Excellent, okay.
So I guess.
Interesting. Okay, any questions for Mr. Crenshaw? Okay, moving on, we have an executive session for negotiations. TJ, Gina, how long you think? 15? Okay. 15 minutes. All right, so we need a motion to go into executive session for 15 minutes for negotiations.
So moved.
Gina, Bree. Motion by Gina, seconded by Bree, that USD 298 Board of Education go into executive session at 8:33 p.m. for 15 minutes with the superintendent for the purpose of discussing the latest proposal relating to employer-employee negotiations. And that the Board of Education return to open meeting at 8:48 p.m. in the Board of Education conference room. The executive session is required to protect the district's right to its negotiating position and the public position under coma exception. Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0.